Hi, welcome to the Shepherd's Rest Doc Talk. This is episode 67A.
I'm Cam and this is Julie.
Yes.
So we are back to the beginning. We've rolled back the scroll.
Yes, we have.
And we are not going to sing it. You can listen to it. It's called Rolling Back the Scroll. I listened to last year's Doc Talk and pretty much it covered it all.
You did a good job last year.
That's why it was 33 minutes. So I thought we would just kind of look at it more in a,
Bigger scale.
Yeah, bigger scale, to look at how it all, in just this week's, which is, I should tell you, Genesis 1 through 6-8.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. I know. 30 minutes, and I touched on some highlights, but I thought we'd touch on a few other things, look at the big picture, and kind of get an idea of how this really does set, when it says from the foundation, we're speaking of from before Genesis 1:1. Before the heavens and earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was before the foundation. And we see that mentioned. We're talking about Messiah, talking about him knowing who we are, knowing the bride, knowing his people, his children. All those were determined before the foundation.
Right.
The way we wanted to kind of tackle this year's Torah portion, which this is the year of 5777 on the Hebraic calendar. That 5 is grace and mercy. The 3 sevens has a lot of
meat.
Yeah, a lot of meat to
Meaning.
it. So anyway, we thought, wouldn't it be neat to really look at the whole Torah portion more as how does it apply to us now? What do the mitzvot, which means commandments plural, what do those mean for us today in 2016 and 17?
Right. If we're
what
going
does
to
that
start
look like?
looking like the body that we're supposed to be, we need to figure out what's relevant for us.
Right. And I really think that's one of the problems that we have sitting in a church just listening is, well, that sounds great. And you leave and you're like, well, I'm supposed to be a good person. But what does that mean? What's that look like according to the Father, not according to man? So we thought we would pick out some of the mitzvot, where they begin, and they'll tie all the way through. This week, I would say between Genesis 1 to Genesis 3, we would also see the pattern, the bigger pattern just for Israel as well. We see in Genesis 1:28 where God creates man, and he gives the first mitzvah, which is be fruitful and multiply. We see with Abraham, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Abraham gets that covenant, and that's going to go all the way through Israel, right? And he does it. He does become fruitful. He does multiply. Now, obviously, Adam does too, or we would never even have Abraham.
Right.
We have where Abraham does become the sand, right? Conquering, they have to conquer the land, right? That's one of the things that they're supposed to subdue the world. And one of the things, the fact that they do not subdue the serpent, which they should have, they let the serpent overcome. And we see that same thing with Cain and Abel. Cain makes that choice of, I'm going to do it
my way.
Yeah, do it my way. And Abel's like, no, I want to do the Lord's way.
That was the difference between the two.
Yes. And so that conquering, taking possession, conquering, however you want to say it, the land, we see that where Israel finally goes in, and they have to conquer the Canaanites, right? And everyone who's in the land in order to possess it. We see in Genesis 2:7-8 where man was formed outside of the garden and then put in. Right. Israel was formed in the wilderness and then put in the land. Yeah. All right, same pattern there. We see in Genesis 2:16-17 where the boundaries of life and death are established. Well, obviously, isn't that what happens with Israel? They're given Torah so they can have what? Boundaries of life and death.
Right.
It's the same idea, right? Blessing and curse. And that's what Adam and Eve are given. Blessing if you obey, life, and curse, death if you don't. Separation, there's death. So there's just so many patterns that we see established that affect the entire rest of the story as well as our lives.
Can I say something?
Yes.
And just like Adam's sin brought the curse on everybody, when we sin, ramifications come to everybody, the entire body. Right. So to say that we can, it doesn't matter, no one knows about that, or, it's okay if I do that, no one has to, it affects everybody.
That's a great leadway to this.
Okay.
So, kind of jumping around, we see in Genesis 3 where the serpent is damned or cursed to eat dust, right?
Right.
Eat dirt. Well, and that's death. The whole thing about the serpent, Hasatan, is he's been ordered to eat dust. Okay, so what is dust? Well, it's death. Mm-hmm. All right. However, we see in Genesis 2 where the Lord, he is dust to make man.
Mm-hmm.
That's death, but what does he add? It's when a mist comes over.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mist that waters. So we have water and dust. That water, living water, is what gives life to that dust.
To the dust.
And then we have where he breathes into him. So now we have wind, fire, and earth. I mean, right there, that's where it came from. All to create man, all right, to give him the life. So back on the serpent side, we have where now he's just going to eat the dust without the life, living water, and without the breath of God. Just dirt.
Just
Death. Now, we know that Hasatan is said to be the destroyer, right? Destroyer that does what? He goes to and fro looking for who he can devour. He can only devour death. That's
Right.
all. So, we know from Romans 8 that when we go live by the spiritual law, when we live by the law, when we live by Torah, we have
Through the
life.
Spirit.
Through the Spirit, we have life. But when we live carnally through the flesh, we have death. So, let's also think about this scripture, that all we have to do is draw near and the enemy must flee, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he can't be around death. He can't be around life. He can only be around death. There was a comment made by a doctor, and they said, well, you know, cancer can only live on dead cells. It can't live on vital, healthy cells, which made me click. That's the same thing with Hasatan. He can only
He's a
live on
cancer.
death. Yes, he can only live on death. That's all. So when we choose to live carnally, we are going by the flesh. We're creating death in us, giving him the absolute opportunity, actually welcoming him in because the Lord promises. It's a promise to Hasatan. You're going to eat dirt, dust. And that promise allows him to eat any of it. So when we, like you said, when we're doing our quiet little secretive sins,
It's death.
hey, it's death. And we open the door and allow the enemy. We basically are setting a table for him.
Right.
Another fantastic point this week is looking at the bride, the
Yes.
marriage. All right.
Mhm.
So what we have is we have Adam who had to be put to sleep to take the rib out. So only when he was asleep, we know through the Brit Hadashah and through the Tanakh that we see times when so-and-so went to sleep or so-and-so slept. I mean, they died. All right, they died, but the idea of using sleep is because they all understand the promise of the resurrection. That's why it's called sleep and not he just died.
Right.
They use that because they're understanding. It's not like we say they passed away just because we don't want to say they died. That's just being polite. He slept wasn't being polite. It's because there was so much more involved in that.
Right.
So here we have Adam going to sleep and Eve coming out. Well, Yeshua dies, okay,
Mhm.
sleep, and we come out of his side. His
Right.
people come out of his side. Listen, nobody besides Eve coming out of his side was able to be Adam's mate. There was
Right.
no one else. However, it is suggested that
Yeshua is the second Adam.
right, and so only those who come out can be his mate. It is suggested that one of the things that Hasatan, the shining one, was trying to do was trying to prove himself. This is going to sound weird, but prove himself as a equal mate for Eve, not for Adam, but for Eve.
Oh.
That he was an equal mate, showing that he could provide something for her that Adam, the godly man, could not. Well, isn't that what we get in the world constantly?
Yes.
Wooing the bride away. Not messing with Adam, the first or second Adam. It's the bride he wants to mess with. Pulling his people. Now listen, not only did the bride come out of Adam's rib, but together so did the entire world.
Right.
Because everyone
She's the
came
mother of
from,
all.
right,
Yeah.
she's the mother of all. Okay, so let's look at that. The same thing from Messiah. Any and everyone who comes into the kingdom must come through Messiah.
Right.
Everyone. Whether it's the daughter, the sister, the
son,
son, the bride, everyone must go through. Just like with Adam. Through the side, right? I mean, it's just
Because you're walking
first
together.
Adam, second Adam. Right, yes. All right, so let's think about this. Adam and Eve are created, right?
Mhm.
They're on the sixth day. And what's the next thing they do? They have a
Fall.
Shabbat.
No.
They actually get to rest first. Oh my gosh.
What?
Okay, so when you have a young lamb,
Right.
and a lamb's going to be used for an offering, it has to be 8 days old because it has to go through one Shabbat before it
Ah.
can be offered.
Okay.
So Adam had to go through one Shabbat before he could give himself for Eve. It's
Okay.
got to fit the pattern. Does that make sense?
Give himself meaning
Yes,
eating the fruit
fall.
as well.
Right, eating the fruit, which, it's, in a way, it's kind of
You
what he
weren't talking
did.
about the other. Giving
No.
himself.
Just to clarify, the one Shabbat was meaning before they fell, because he, in a way, while choosing to fall on behalf of his bride, because
Right.
that's the only way she could be redeemed,
Right.
he had to have gone through a Shabbat. Not anything having to do with the procreation of the world, but having to do with the saving of the world, which, that's what the lamb was used for. That
Right.
had to be 8 days old.
And that's Yeshua on the cross.
Right.
He took on all of our sins, just like Adam took on the sin of his wife. Right.
So no wonder.
He had to, because
Yes, right.
Adam did it, so he had to do it.
Right.
He had to be willing to take on all of our sins so he could die, so we could be redeemed, just like Adam did with Eve. Ooh.
There's another great pattern here that I think we've really got to recognize that goes all the way, and that is the not mixing. You know, when he's creating, he's like, don't mix. Do not mix. In his perfect world, it was don't mix. Then man fell, and then you start seeing all this mixing of things. You see where now man's getting to decide. When Eve looked and determined it was good, wanted to see what was, eat from the tree of good and evil to determine, it wasn't so much to be as God. It was to be able to have the power to determine what is good and what is evil.
We are so
Not
there.
to be able to say, oh God, you think this is good and you think this is evil, but to say, I think this is good and this is evil. Right. And didn't we see that in Judges where they did what was right in their own sight? That's
what we're doing right now.
right. That's why we're in the position we're in, of the
But there's
confusion
a
we're
million
in.
different denominations.
Exactly. And because we no longer even are able to clearly see look at how many generations away we are. And then we have Messiah. Look, Adam's job was to be as a Messiah. And in a way, he was.
Right.
His job, though, was to reveal who God was, not to try to be God.
Right.
And our job is to reveal. We're to be like the moon, where we reflect his light, not where we're the equal suns.
So when we decide that what God says to do is not for us, we're basically placing ourselves above God.
Yeah, absolutely. We're editing his word like you weren't so smart.
Yeah.
We're doing exactly
Wow.
what Eve did. Okay. And
What
you know
a dangerous place we're in.
You know who's doing that? Believers.
Right.
The world, okay, whatever.
They're supposed
Believers
to do that.
are doing that.
Yes.
Now, this week ends with, and Noah was perfect in his generation.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So here we
Before
have
the judgment.
Adam, okay, and now Adam's gone, and we have Noah, who is perfect in his generations. Because why? Because every generation has to have someone who's going to draw people to think, is this a Messiah? What's this look like?
Mm-hmm.
To be able to always compare the tree of knowledge and the tree of life.
Yes.
The tree of life, both were given.
That's right.
But man chose to not eat the tree of life. And I thank God after they fell, we talked about that last year, but both were presented. And, trees are often representing men.
Mm-hmm.
So again, here are two men.
Yes.
The Messiah
and
or the false
mixed
Messiah.
guy.
Yeah, the mixed guy. Who's the false Messiah? Which one? Which one do you want?
And the thing
And
is,
we must
the
die to
mixed guy-
flesh.
The mixed guy,
And we don't have to die to flesh.
Yeah, the mixed guy, he has good and evil.
Right.
Meaning,
absolutely.
That's the danger. So by default, he's all evil.
Right.
Because
It's lukewarm.
Yes, it's the church of Laodicea.
Right.
They've taken the stuff of God, the stuff of the world, mixed it all together, and said, "Here's our lukewarm gospel. Drink it."
Right.
And just like lukewarm coffee, he's gonna spit it out.
That's
you
right.
either like iced coffee or you like piping hot coffee,
Yep.
but not
In
lukewarm
between.
coffee.
Yeah.
No.
So the takeaway for today is basically, let's remember the Sabbath, okay? It was blessed for a reason. That's what he blessed, because it's the wedding ring. You bless a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
you bless it, all right? Let's keep that. It's going to look different for all of us, depending on where we are in our walk. Just keep moving forward.
And Yeshua said some will produce 30, 70, or
60, 30,
Yeah.
60, and 100.
yes.
That's
and
right.
that
They're still producing.
right. The point is, do with what you have available to you.
Right. The ones who are cut off are the ones who have no fruit.
That's right.
Got to have some fruit. The next thing is be fruitful and multiply. Okay. So maybe you're like, well, I'm not married, or maybe you are married. You're like, look, 2, 3 kids, that's it. Fine. But let's do it in the spiritual sense of making disciples. As we're learning and we're walking out, share what you learn. It could be just, little nuggets that you share with each other,
Mhm.
but share it. Make disciples. Don't just tell somebody, are you saved? Do you know Jesus Christ? God. And walk off. No, share.
Live
really
it
get
first.
a person. Look, if you disciple one person a year, you will touch more people than if you were a Billy Graham in the end of your life, because each person does. Anyway, it's a really cool math trick. The last thing is to not mix. If we could just learn to not mix things and to go according to his word. I mean, the Lord even warns Cain, hey, watch out. Watch out. Because remember that enemy's like, ooh, I'm going to have
Crouching
some
at the
dead
door.
stuff. I'm going to have some dead stuff I'm going to get to eat. If we don't mix and we walk by the Spirit, we don't give the enemy anything to eat on. He's going to starve. He's going to leave.
That's why he
That's
has
what we
to
want.
flee.
Right. He's like, and Noah is considered a representation of the Messiah for that generation and every generation. We've got to have that representation. Wouldn't it be interesting if our generation today, if that representation was not in a person, but in the body acting as
Yes.
the person that we're supposed to be, and that becomes the Messiah or the representation of what Messiah looks like in order for him to really
The
come back.
non-adulterous woman.
Right, because the adulterous woman, ooh, she's
mixing.
happy and
She's
and
mixing.
busy.
She's dabbling in this and
That's right.
dabbling in that,
And she's
and
busy
she says
right now.
it's okay because that law, it's done.
It's all,
Right.
Well, that's it for today. We thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you will continue with us throughout the rest of the year. We will see you on the flip side with Julie, and not the Brit Hadashah, but the prophets, the Haftorah portion. It's going to be an exciting year.
It is. Yes. Okay.
Shalom. A nut. A nut? What? You a nut.
I ain't a nut. You a nut.
You a nut. What?
You a
What kind of
pecan.
nut? Oh, listen, walnut. Walnut. Can't talk.